something on ReviewCast, on Review Faithful, that the show doesn't show you, that I'm going to basically tell you essentially what happened, why the other half of her dress got ripped. Hello and welcome everyone. I'm your host Ash, and welcome to another episode of OnReviewCast, your number one go-to show for all things media. And we review things here and we break them down in great detail on this podcast. And today we're catching up on the Vampire Diaries. I always say that shit. What's wrong with me? On Interview with a Vampire, Season 2, Episode 2 on review. Let's get into it. Season 2, Episode 2 of Interview with a Vampire. And just like every other episode, guys, we're going to jump into this episode with an episode breakdown courtesy of Fandom. And the second episode of the second season is called Do You Know What It Means to Be Loved by Death? It's the second episode in the second season of the Interview with a Vampire and the 9th episode of the series overall. It aired on May 19th, 2024 on AMC. And synopsis. Armand joins the interview and he and Louis tell Malloy about how they met. Yeah, so this is basically the episode of the Meet Cute, right? As the theater and the movie world basically speak on. And I will say, like, a lot happens really in this second episode. Some expected, some definitely unexpected, and it's I don't know how if I'm being honest, I think it's like, I don't know how I'm exactly enjoying it, because like I'm going into this with almost like a sort of kind of different perspective because of I've seen the movie. And if you've seen the movie, guys, you know exactly kind of sort of what I'm talking about, because this part was in the movie and we actually talked about it in the previous video as well. Go ahead and on review videos and take a look at the actual movie breakdown for the Interview with the Vampire, because it's actually really interesting. They kind of somewhat pay homage to the exact things that happened in the movie, and so we understand they're trying to do similar, if not the exact things within the book. But there are a lot of differences here as well. We're definitely going to jump into that. But right off the bat, let's just jump into, we want to get into the whole Armand thing. So Armand is joining into these interviews now, like what we said basically in the synopsis, and he's getting into these interviews now. He's being more involved. And it's just from the previous episode that we said before, something that was kind of like really bothering me, which I didn't really understand, was like, okay, what we got basically is that Armand came into this. He wasn't really Armand in the first season. He revealed that to him at the end of the first season. It was like, oh, Armand's a vampire or whatever it is. But it's also revealed in the second season that he didn't want Louis to necessarily do the interview in the first place, and because it feels like his sense of like he was kind of trying to protect him. But now that everything is out in the open, he's a vampire. Why not basically just stop this and just say that, no, Louis, don't do this interview or what have you? But like, he allows the interview to continue. And if you remember in the episode prior, we have a scene with Armand and Louis basically in their bedroom discussing why he is concerned about Louis continuing this interview. And I can't help but think, they come up with a plan. They come up with a plan to say that we're going to manipulate Malloy and get him to say basically whatever it is that we want to say to tell our story the way how we want to be told. But I also think, like, that being said, to what end? Why? I guess I'm thinking maybe getting a little bit ahead of myself, but I'm sure you guys are wondering it as well. You know, why continue this farce, and why continue this the idea of pretending to be interested in, or letting the world into your whole vampiric world? Is this how you get your sick kicks, vampires? Is this it? Is this how you entertain yourselves for all of eternity? I mean, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised, because, I mean, considering the psychological mind fuckery, I should say, that basically goes on within this episode, entertaining themselves for all of eternity, via that, just like, putting on this ruse with Daniel Malloy, I wouldn't necessarily be surprised, because considering what we see in this episode, we really delve into the psyche of, the vampire in the episode later on, but we'll get more into that later, like I said before. But like right off the bat within the second episode, this episode is involving Armand more now because he wants to be a part of these interviews, and he's now revealed himself as the vampire Armand. He's no longer Reid, so he's involving himself a little bit more. And I did not know that. I suspected. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, because you probably agree with me and thought the same thing, that Armand would probably be a part of the interview, but him narrating, like, I didn't like it. I'll just be straight up. I didn't like it. That was instantly, I thought straight up that was annoying. Because, like, you gotta understand, guys, like, let me know if you agree with me. Like, we've been hearing, Louis' voice narrating over these past times for like a season now, 9 episodes, like how we just basically said, and you get so used to it. It's like, okay, like this is how Interview with the Vampire basically goes. Louis recants basically the story of what happens to him and Claudia, and him and his life as being his time as a vampire. Okay, cool. And the second perspective of Louis. And the second I heard Armand's voice, I was like, no. I was like, no, I don't. I was like, oh, don't like that. Like, and he comes in, he starts narrating, and they start finishing each other's sentences. And like in the episode, you can actually tell. That's what's so funny about this too. You can actually tell, like, we're not the only ones that's annoyed. I mean, when I say we, I mean like I should just say me. I'm not the only one that's annoyed. Daniel Malloy gets annoyed at this too. It's like, oh, power couple. Now we're both telling this story, and we're finishing each other's sentences, and I'm just like, this is annoying as fuck. It is annoying as fuck. And I mean, like, let me know what you guys think. If you've ever been like in like a situation, like you yourself could be in a relationship or not even be in a relationship. It's not nothing necessarily to do with that. It has everything to do with, like, you know, like it's just like you meet a couple, and some couples are okay, but then there's other couples that are just like, oh my god, fucking like. They're just annoying. I like how they bounce the annoyingness between themselves, and they emanate annoyance. Like that's basically what I felt between the two, and it's just I find that honestly truly remarkable. Like, it was just annoying. He really didn't need to be a part of, and I thought about it when they actually introduced him as like, oh, he's going to be a part of these interviews, and I was like, the second that they did do that, I was like, oh god, crap in heaven, please don't let him narrate, because that would throw off the story and feel just, it's not really his story, it's not really his perspective. We started off with Louis, and I guess it's called Interview with a Vampire. We don't have to necessarily end with Louis, but like, I mean, like how he was doing it, it was like they were bouncing off one another. They were like, okay, you speak it, then I speak, you speak it, then I say. It's like, no. If you want an Armand episode, I'm cool with just an Armand episode narrating. But I'm not cool with like we got to do everything as a couple. We have to talk as a couple. We have to do this as a couple. I'm just like, it's just annoying. It's annoying as fuck. Yeah, and then something to note in this episode is like when Armand, they start talking about how their time in Paris. But I want to know if you guys noticed this in the episode when Daniel Malloy first gets those photos of what's happening in the 1940s in Paris, meeting, getting these pictures from Louis and of essentially Claudia and him at the restaurant. Malloy starts shaking a little bit, and he shakes a little bit like he did in the previous season 1, when he slapped the shit out of Louis for trying to invade his mind. So that was like a little bit of a foreshadowing as to, like, the attackers are kind of already begun. But we'll get back more into that later. I want to talk about the meeting between Armand and Louis. So, again, if you've been following me for a while here on the channel and listening to me for a bit, you know that we covered this movie, Interview with the Vampire, as well. And in the movie and in the TV series, things happen a little bit like differently, for sure. And their meeting is just different, for sure. So they show the scene of like Louis walking through a park, and he's just like, I guess, taking in the time of Paris and enjoying the park in the series, and he's just like looking at some trees and looking at some birds and watching two people fucking. I mean, like, that's just what they do in Paris. And I know Paris is like, wow, they people like fucking though in the woods or in the bushes, because like they just show it. And I thought it interesting that this it seems like this season, I'm wondering if this season they're trying to like turn things like down a little bit, tone things down a little bit, like with the nudity and stuff. I'll get more into that a little bit later too. But like in the corner, and I also felt like they cut certain things from this episode, but whatever. In the corner of, because the only reason I said like though he saw a bird, he saw a tree, he saw two people fucking in the woods is because they showed it off screen. They showed it in the corner of the eye of the screen, which is like, I was like, well, why did they show this? This is like AMC, and like sometimes they just show, and then season 1 they just showed there was all kind of debauchery. It was like titties and like people getting their jaw ripped off. It was some crazy shit. But like I don't know, it seems like a little bit of censorship going on. But I don't know. And when they first meet, Armand, and they again with this finishing sentences thing, it's so annoying as fuck. Armand first says to him, they switch back to the interview, and the lawyer asks like, "Oh, what was the first thing you said to him? What was the first thing you guys shared?" Armand responds and says, "The first thing I said," and then Louis says it at the same time, and then Armand's like, then Louis like, "Please," no, and Armand's like, "No, you please, it's your story," and then Louis says, was essentially like, "I will not harm you," and that sent off all kind of fucking sirens in my head, honestly. When he says, "I will not harm you," that was just I don't know. It rubbed me the wrong way. It was a bit sus. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, because honestly, also too, if you watch the movie, you know what the fate of a lot of characters are, and I would say that who are directly tied to Louis, and how essentially he did hurt him essentially because he was involved with him in a certain degree, to a certain manner, and all through this, like Louis basically like looks like stunned and like looks almost like kind of basically overwhelmed. It's just again shows the acting range of the guy that actually essentially plays Louis. He's actually really good. The guy that plays not Rashid, Armand. He did an okay job. He was doing an okay job. Like I mean, it's not like I didn't really believe he had like he's trying to do the thing where like Louis doesn't. Louis does it way better, but like he has like a French accent for whatever reason. And this is also a stark contrast. But he has a French accent like in the actual flashback, but then like in the actual like modern day era, he doesn't. And it's just like he's not doing it very well. It's not as well as like Louis. That transitioning isn't working too well for me. Anyway, it's hard to accept. I'll just be straight up. Anyway, this is a stark difference. As you know, if you haven't watched the video, again on the actual show, on the actual movie of How Breakdown, they don't necessarily. I don't think it's Paris they meet. I think it's somewhere else. I want to say somewhere in maybe like Romania or something like that. And it's not necessarily in a park where they meet. It's literally in the street, and it's some vacant like townish kind of like street where and the first person he actually meets is Santiago. It's not even like it's not really necessarily Armand. So again, stark differences to basically what happened in the movie and in the show. So anyway, like Armand basically invites Louis to go to this theater thing that he has. That he invites him to one of his theater shows because apparently Armand owns a theater company. And the psychological fuckery essentially plays out there similarly to how it plays out in the movie. So that kind of synced up there. The first thing first interaction that we have with the whole theater, this interaction that we have with the whole theater thing, it is that it's based off of like vampires. So it's kind of sort of like that thing where it's like hiding in plain sight. Like they all kind of admit and say, like they're all vampires. They are all working living vampires, but they have this. They put on these shows, and they sell the facade of vampire. And the first thing again we see is this flying shit that annoyed the shit out of me. I'm not gonna lie. Again, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Vampires and flying it's weird. It's weird. I don't know why. Maybe again, this comes from the days of me growing up with like Angel and Buffy and whatever. And I believe like with vampires, they shouldn't necessarily be able to fly unless they could transform into all these other tricks. But like just flying like Superman, though, that's like a little weird to me. But the first thing we fucking see is fucking Santiago, where he's like, he puts a hook on himself. Again, like for the human fan base of this thing, he puts a hook on himself, and he starts flying. Claudia makes the remark, it's like he's actually flying. The rope slipped. I saw. I just don't agree with vampires and flying. It's not that the scene looked weird or whatever it is, but it didn't look weird. The scene didn't look weird. The scene, it looked okay. It looks like how, you know why it didn't look weird? There was some psychological fuckery that was basically going on with me watching it, because like it was like I was in the audience and I was like a human, and he flew like a human. He flew like a human, and I don't know if that's necessarily good, because it plays up to what, let me know if you guys understand this, it plays up to like the whole psychological aspect of like what the humans should see versus what they should be believing versus actually what it really is. Because if he's just flying as a vampire, 2024 theatrical presentation of what a vampire is, his flying looks fucking weird. But if he's flying that way and he's moving that way to entice the crowd and put on a performance, then it looks great. It actually works. So it's like a catch-22. Do you know what I mean? It's fucking weird. Again, this episode, and the guy that they got to play Santiago looks like a fucking weirdo. I'm not gonna lie. Santiago looks vastly fucking different, not, if I'm being honest, in the movie as well. When the movie compares to the series, essentially. So we're introduced to this theater, and it's basically one big mind fuckery and one big mind psychological fuck. And it's if you think about it, it's also fucking brilliant though. Like I said before, they hide in plain sight. They put on this whole theatrical show where everything is basically fake, and they go through this thing, and they basically allude to how they essentially do it and how they put together this whole theatrics. And the entire time, all of it's fake. All of it is fake, and it plays into the human, entertainment side of their brain, of the believing that, this is very entertaining, but this is fake. Nobody's basically getting hurt, except for the last scene. And again, they do this in the show as well. And the show, and this is in the movie as well, where again he explains that only the last scene essentially matters, and only the last scene is essentially real, because up until everything else was fake. They were using fake blood, the projector, everything was going X, Y, and Z. But when we get to the final scene, they actually it's weird, because the scene's essentially going on, which is a little bit different from the actual movie. Because in the movie, they don't have a scene actually playing and then someone runs out on stage and interrupts the fucking show. That's not what it is. There's an actual scene. They actually play out a whole entire scene. They just reveal this person who is being captured by these vampires, and trying to get the crowd to believe that she has been essentially kidnapped and taken by these people and is about to be murdered. But believing that the entire show is a show, the people don't basically do anything about it. They all think it's an act, but it's actually real. And stark contrast from the actual movie, I will say. And if you guys have seen the movies, let me know if you agree. Let me know if you agree. And I'm speaking to those who actually have seen the movie. This scene compared to the movie felt a little bit tamer compared to the movie. Again, with the censorship. So she runs out on stage, and I guess I want to know if you guys actually caught this. So she runs out on stage, and she's kind of begging for her life and begging for someone to help her and screaming that these vampires are real, they're gonna kill people, X, Y, and Z, all this other stuff, trying to get them to help. And like Louis, the entire time, Louis is looking sick, and Claudia looks enthralled. But we know like Louis is the tamer of the two. And while looking enthralled, Claudia looks onward. But when she first comes out, and this is why I talk about the censorship, and there's some massive cuts to this we can basically tell. And I'm going to explain why I have issues with this. When she first comes out, her shirt is like ripped kind of, as well as like down a little bit. She's wearing a dress, and her dress is like down a little bit, and it's basically, you can see her shoulder. So she's not showing any tit or anything like that. No boobs are showing or whatever. She's very covered up, but also showing a little bit of skin. And the thing is, like, she begs for her life, and Santiago corrects her and say, she says like, he says like, and he says like, no, speak English. This is an English speaking crowd. She speaks English. She starts begging for her life, and she begins to tell her story of basically essentially how she was kidnapped from these fucking people, by these fucking people. And nobody's believing her inside of the crowd. Everybody's laughing at her. When she essentially says this, and they're all looking around, and then they do a hard cut to like the crowd, like I said, looking around, and Santiago, not Santiago, they do a hard cut, the people are essentially looking around, and when we cut back to them after laughing and basically reacting, and her essentially sobbing, and begging and pleading for her life, we do a cut, and when we cut back, like half of the other half of her dress is like gone, and it's like it's like what the fuck happened to the rest of the other side of her fucking dress? Like, did it just magically like fall off? Like, what the fuck happened? Like, now she's showing, instead of one shoulder being revealed, she's showing two shoulders. I forget what they actually call it inside in the actual professional term for it is. It's the continuity. We're going on in the show here. We're going to call it her shirt continuity. Her shirt continuity is not fucking adding up. That's basically what I'm getting at. It doesn't make any fucking sense. Because at one point, she's like, she has the shirt on, only half of her shoulder is essentially showing. And then at the other, and then they cut to the next part, and all of her shoulders, both of her shoulders are showing. And I say this, and I mention this because it's fucking annoying when shows do that. Like, I think there was some other scene, I can't necessarily remember, where it's like one scene where it's like the guy has his hand on his head in one shot, and then it cuts back to the person who's basically delivering some lines, and it cuts back to the other person who's having the conversation with, and his hand's fucking gone. It doesn't make any sense. Like, it takes me out of. I fucking hate that. Let me know, guys, what you think. The continuity of the scene continuity has to basically be the same, and if it's not there, it essentially takes me out of the believability of the actual show. And if that's not there, dude, especially in a show like this where we have mythical creatures like vampires running around, and I understand, yes, they're putting on a show or whatever, like from the psychological aspects of fucking these people who are humans, but it still isn't right. Like, that's not something that's like necessarily acceptable in terms of like a professional production, which I expect from essentially AMC. It doesn't make any sense. It's not the continuity is fucked, and I hate it. I fucking hate it. Something I also wanted to mention about that too is, again, it's a far cry contrast from actually what we see in the actual fucking movie, where she straight up shows tits. Like, Santiago de-dresses her, and the way how, and here's something on OnReviewCast, on Review Faithful, that the show doesn't show you, that I'm going to basically tell you essentially what happened, why the other half of her dress got ripped. The other half of her dress fucking got ripped because Santiago fucking basically de-dresses her, showing all her tits and everything. She titifies her. She titifies her, showing all her tits, and then he drinks from her, and that's basically, he strips her down in front of this fucking crowd, bare ass naked in the movie, and fucking bites her. It seems like in this episode that happened, but they cut it. That happened, and then she was like, "Oh no, I'm not comfortable showing boob on TV." I know some of the book, oh, he's showing tit on TV. I don't want to show my tits on TV. And they were like, all right, we'll cut around it. That's essentially what it feels like. It feels like they skipped certain scenes, and that's what I mean. They got a little bit of like a more censorship going on with this, and I don't know why. Like, don't they know that we're here for the carnage? Like, do they not know that we're here for the fucking carnage? We want to see the tits and the ass and the blood and the ridiculousness. You know what I mean? Like, we see people sobbing in the streets every day. We want to see the carnage. That's what we're here for. But it's just something that I noticed, and I thought that was very, very fucked. The shirt continuity. You're like, what the fuck was that? That was so unprofessional. AMC, get your shit together. Interview with the Vampire. This is season 2, and I gotta tell you, some things I'm looking at this, I'm not impressed. I'm here for the titties and the ass, and not just for censorship. You know what I mean? Anyway, like I said before, getting back to it. Basically, what happens is after they strip her down, these vampires basically feed on her, and they go back to they go back to the show, what people believe is the show, and they end the show there. What a mind fuck, though, isn't it? Right? Just to have like a bunch of cover, and also again like the perfect fucking cover. Have a bunch of vampires put on a show, and then only at the very end actually have someone essentially being murdered and being killed, and letting it happen right in front of the people as they do it. Like, they're basically getting away with murder, and yeah, that was just That was brilliant. Also a scene from the that's in the movie that's in the series that's not necessarily in the movie is that we get to see, while she's begging for her life, before all of that happens, while she's begging for her life, the lady on stage, Santiago goes up to one of the fat rich gentlemen of Paris, and he says, would you trade your life for hers, or whatever it is? And basically he denies it, and he says that it's not his time. And they proceed on with basically eliminating this woman. It seems like, I wanted to point that scene out because it seems like, for whatever reason, in the movie, I will say that Santiago is depicted as, and I'm pretty sure this is the same thing with the books, but he's depicted as a very cynical kind of almost like character, a theatrical character, if you will. But I feel like in this series, he's a bit more, it's a bit more sinister, and he has almost a true disdain for the human races in general, as opposed to his vampiric, his vampiric brother, and he has some kind of disdain for them, and he has some kind of judgment because he's critical of them. He's very harsh on them, and he says, "Let it be known that he or she would sacrifice themselves." Wouldn't sacrifice themselves or would sacrifice any of you when, the same person who you shaking hands with in church is the same person who will give you up in a second, right? So he has a cynical view on the humanity and human nature that we don't necessarily see within the movies, which I'm interested if that's actually in the books. But anyway, it's around this time we also see Daniel Malloy. We cut back to Daniel Malloy, and well, first of all, we find out that the interview, or that during the interview, these people that are traveling, the whole brigade that put on the show, basically had the opportunity to be in Lestat's presence. So they had run-ins with Lestat, and they are the whole secret is that Lestat. That they killed Lestat, and they're basically trying to hide it and keep it away from the fact that they actually essentially did this. And Daniel Malloy is like, you guys shared a lover, and and Armand's like, yeah, I fucked Lestat, I fucked everyone, and it's basically what theater kids do, right? All day they just be fucking. Theater kids just be fucking, yo. They just be fucking, yo. Which is, but I don't know. This is something that I wanted to kick in there just to mention because I thought that was funny. But back to the interview with Malloy, with Armand and Louis. Armand and Louis basically start to psychologically tag team this motherfucker and make him And it's like, it's weird because Malloy was pressing him about, I think, a topic. And then Louis basically just starts probing his mind, asking him questions about himself. And it's kind of like, well, who's conducting the interview here? Is it Malloy or is it Louis? Like, you know what I mean? It comes to that stark contrast. We get a little bit of that. And it was like, whoa, you know what I mean? It was like, it was a different time. Let me know in the comments what you think. Like, in the comments, like, please let me know. During the interview, it was like, again, he was being psychologically fucked. He was just like raw dogging him, like psychologically, to the point where Malloy looked like basically a helpless old man, where he didn't know basically how to continue forward in pushing back on the interview and asking him questions. And to the point where he had to just basically be like, continue, go on, and let me know what happens next. So he was like psychologically bested because now that there's two of them. And this is what I was talking about, the integrity of the interview being conducted and exactly what exactly is being said and what exactly are we to truly believe during this interview. Because now Armand is there, and now it's like, it's kind of like, if you guys have any kind of scientific background or you understand any kind of scientific procedures, it's kind of like, you want a controlled environment. You don't want you have a control and you have an experiment. You want a controlled environment because you don't want any other influence to be swayed from the results of your initial fucking collection of results. You don't want your results to be swayed in any kind of way. So you want a controlled environment and nothing impeding or increasing the chances of your results. But because Armand is there, he's fucking with the formula, babe. So we don't know how this fucking thing, we don't know how truthful any of this really is. It just brings in the question, like, what's real? That's basically what I'm trying to get at the end of the day. We don't know what's fucking real. And it's just going to be very interesting going forward and moving forward and see exactly what is real. And them challenging and them telling the story, and from what we understand is going on. And it was just very, very odd to see Daniel Malloy actually on the back foot of this interview, essentially. But yeah, it's essentially, that's more or less the highlights of this episode. And at the end, they just find this very rich place. The massacre scene, I think, was actually pretty cool too. At the end, they find this place and they go inside. It looks very rich and fancy, and all kind of chaos is happening in the background of Louis and Armand having a conversation, and they're basically falling in love with each other while all kind of crazy chaos is happening in the background. Very, very much of the vampiric nature of themselves, of causing ruthlessness and killing, and falling in love, but also having some kind of like chaos in the background. But yeah, that's basically essentially going to do it for the episode, guys. Before we go, we're going to get the on review score. We're going to get the on review score. Interview with a Vampire, season 2, episode 2. On review, it's definitely going to get
a 3 out of 5.
But yeah, that's basically essentially going to do it for the episode, guys. If you made it all to the end, thank you so much for listening. I really do appreciate it. We here at OnReviewCast, we really do appreciate all of our listeners. Again, like I said, thank you for listening. Remember to follow us on all of our socials: the Facebook, the Instagram, the Twitter. Also, guys, check out Anomaly Beats. This episode was brought to you by Anomaly Beats. It's Anomaly Beats by Ash on YouTube, and we're streaming everywhere on all streaming platforms, essentially. Listen, if you like anime music, if you like anime style beats, lo-fi kind of like stuff, that's maybe 1 or 2 kind of hip-hop-ish kind of beats on there for those hip-hop lovers, go ahead and take a listen to that as well. And lastly, guys, like I always say at the end of these videos, be sure to do this: be safe, be kind, be you. Take care.